Hitman 2-3, this is Hitman 2. What's the status? Over. 2-3, stand by. Goliath, this is 2 Bravo. Request permission to engage enemy paratroopers and attempt to snatch a grid Papa uniform 259er, 119er. Break. Enemy is unaware of our presence at this time. Over. Solid copy. Hitman 2-3, Echo 5 Foxtrot. This is Hitman 2.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Ben Powers coming at you from the Commander's Voice. My guest this morning is George Luz Jr., son of George Luz of Easy Company 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment. George, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Ben. It's always great coming on your show and seeing all your viewers.
Well, thank you. As most of my viewers know, George is a long time and a recurring guest on the show. We wanted to get together. It's August. It's National Airborne Month. National Airborne Day is on the 16th of August. It's a chance to celebrate, the first parachute jump, official parachute jump by the American military. It's a chance to celebrate the 82nd Airborne Division, the 101st Airborne Division being established as divisions. It's just a really important time of year for paratroopers, but the news has kind of overshadowed that a little bit. Folks who are paying attention on what's going on in Afghanistan right now. Now, last couple of days, it's been a really tough time in Kabul. Our Marines and paratroopers are trying to evacuate folks. Our airmen, our Navy corpsmen, all types of folks are doing a fantastic job trying to deal with the turmoil that's taking place over in Afghanistan right now. We've lost 13 servicemen and women in the past couple of days, and it's just been a really tough time. So I want to thank my sisters and brothers who served in Afghanistan, their families, and definitely those that we lost. It's a time to keep them in our memory as we kind of go forth about our daily activities. George, do you got anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I'd like to also. I've got a shirt on that I was given from Chris Langlois, and he gave me this shirt almost 9 or 10 years ago. I wear it once a week for all these years, and it says, "We honor them." And on the back of it, I want to read the inscription. Honor them. In this time of war and in the memory of our fallen heroes, we must be mindful to do everything in our power to keep our troops safe as they keep us safe. Honor them. This shirt is made by a company called ForgeClothing.com, and it's founded by U.S. Navy SEALs.
Well, thank you, George. And that's definitely a thing that we should all be carrying with us close to our hearts and honoring those who serve to keep us safe. I want to dedicate the remainder of today's show to the families of the troopers, Marines, and Navy corpsmen that we lost in the past couple of days overseas. And with that, I just want to open it up and talk about the very interesting stuff that you found in your, that you kind of inherited from your dad. It's most of my viewers probably know it's the 20th anniversary of when the Band of Brothers HBO series came out. I'd say there was renewed interest in it, but it seems like the interest has never waned in the past 20 years. It's become something of a cultural phenomenon. I know it inspires a lot of current servicemen and women, especially paratroopers, to watch it and refresh their memories about the legacy that your dad and his buddies left to today's generation of troopers. So could you share with us what you have, George?
Well, it was part of being locked down, I guess, for a certain amount of time. So I've had this a little bit. Cleaning up the house, you're getting rid of this and that, and you got these bins with things in it, and that this one bin had a bunch of VCR tapes. And as soon as I saw this one specific VCR tape, I knew exactly what was on there. And it was an interview my dad had done with a guy named Tom Kelly. And Tom Kelly is like a historian, a local historian who would go around Rhode Island doing all kinds of pieces, namely veterans type events. And he would put it on the public access channel. Back in the day, the cable TV companies would have this specific channel. So he had put it on this channel, and I remember seeing it. And as soon as I saw it, man, I said, there's where that interview is. So anyway, I got together with my editor. So we went from a VCR tape to the new technology, and Trevor and myself sat down and took this 6 minutes and 36 seconds and kind of put it into 4 different little packages of a video that I hope you'll enjoy.
Okay, so what's the first clip that we're going to be playing? Can you kind of set this one up for us?
Yeah, the first clip, let's see, the first clip. Oh, okay, yeah. So this is about Saving Private Ryan. And, you know, when I'm on tour, when I go to cities and towns around the country, I tell this story. And I read the letter from Winters. But the great thing is I don't need to read the letter from Winters. You can see it now. My dad is telling the story is pretty much exactly like the letter is written to him from Dick Winters. So.
Very cool. Here we go. Stand by while I share my screen.
Have you seen Saving Private Ryan yet?
No, I'll tell you what. Thursday I received an envelope, manila envelope, and one of my buddies, Major William Winters from Hershey, Pennsylvania, he was guest speaker at the premiere in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Mr. Spielberg flew him and a friend of his out there, took him to the premiere of the movie, and he said to me, "You have to see that movie. You swear to hell, in the bed, you swear to hell you're back in Normandy."
Okay.
And it was unbelievable. He said, "It's unbelievable." And I'd probably take a ride down and see the movie.
Well, the interesting thing with that was he says, I'll probably see the movie. So Saving Private Ryan came out on July 24th, 1998. And so I went with my dad to see the movie a little ways past that. And my dad had this mechanism in him in how he diverted his attention and things like that. But so we're watching the movie and everything, we've all seen it. And at the end of the movie, when we all stand up and there's the hush over it and they're rolling the credits, my father gets up and he looks at me and said, "What the hell was that?" In any of those places, they were marching too close together. So he went on this litany of cinematography faux pas. But there was a reason why he was doing that, because, you know, Ryan was an airborne guy.
Right.
And, you know, the Army guys were saying, "Why do we got to go save this Army guy?" So this airborne guy. So anyway, so that was my dad's reaction to it. And people were like looking at him like, "What is this guy doing here?" But anyway, little did they know that, you know, he jumped into Normandy too. So
that's fantastic. That's the most veteran thing I've heard in a while. Because you sit there with your buddies and you watch any military movie and everybody's nitpicking stuff. So it's great to hear that an OG like your dad was doing the same thing. That's awesome.
Yeah. And, you know, most of us know that it's the Ryan family from Tonawanda and the connection with Skip Muck and all that stuff. So, you know, a lot of people think it was the Sullivan family, and, you know, let's face it, they had their tragedies too. But, and then one of the profound things about this is, you know, I've had a chance to meet Skip Muck's family, several of the families, and go to Tonawanda when they had the dedication to the monument to Skip Muck and the Nyland family. And so anyway, that's been one of the amazing things about the series, is to meet not only the guys who survives kids and the guys, but the family members of some of the soldiers who didn't come home.
And one thing I think is really cool that comes from that, not only are we honoring their memories, honoring their legacy, you have something like Saving Private Ryan or Band of Brothers. So there's going to be some technical details wrong, and the thread heads are going to get upset about it. But at the same time, it opens up a dialogue. Somebody like, you know, my daughter, who is not tremendously interested in these kind of things, she is a big fan of the series, and that drives her to ask more questions about my service or her grandfather's service. And it stimulates an interest in a new generation. The way I look at it, I get details important, facts are important. I'm not saying they're not, but even something that's going to have inaccuracies, if it opens up a dialogue about a young woman or a young man's family's past and their contributions to the country, I think it's definitely a good thing. And that outweighs any technical error or inaccuracy.
Oh, I agree. And I think that's what my father would have. The most important thing, I think, and I probably told you this about my dad, was, this is probably what he thought too, was it opened up a dialogue for people to say exactly what you would say. You know, what did my dad do? What did his grandfather do? And we can hear more of those stories.
No, that's cool.
What it's all about, and which is why it's great what you do, Ben.
I appreciate that, George. Speaking of stories, though, so because your dad, obviously, in order to jump into Normandy, he had to be trained to be a paratrooper. So I think you got a clip about your dad, why he was motivated to be a paratrooper. So could you kind of set this one up for us?
Yeah. It was interesting. You know, I can't remember exactly when I remember seeing this tape, but I had this not a misconception, but I had a thought about why my dad joined the Airborne. But he clears it up right here.
All right. Well, with that set up, give me a second here, folks. I'll share my screen again, and we'll go for it.
I went in 1942. I was 21 years old, and I was working, and I was making, I don't know, about $16 a week.
Yeah.
And one day said it's $50 a month extra. Man, I just jumped at my father, just cried. He didn't want me to go. He said, I don't want you doing that, you know.
Again,
that's the thing. You know, you got to remember, he joined in. He would live through the Depression. Man, they were hurting for money. So $50 extra a month. And then Maynard, Maynard had a good. They captured that with Maynard in the series when he was being interviewed, and he said when he was getting the recruiting pitch, and the guy said, "You get $50 out of a month." And then who would like to sign up? And you see him raise his hand like, hey. So, hey, going to war is death defying anyway. So you may as well make as much money as you can, right?
I think the thing that's interesting, there's two things I find really interesting about that. One of them is how timeless young soldiers are. You may have heard talking with other guys as you do your tours and talk about their military experiences of the group called the E4 Mafia. So E4 is a pay grade. It's for the younger soldiers in the Army today. They tend to be specialists, which is the rank between private first class and sergeant. It means that they've been in the Army for a couple of years. They've got some experience. They kind of know the ropes. They can get out of stuff. They can be your best friends or your worst enemies. They're your hardworking young troops. And that's the kind of thing, not saying that they're not motivated and dedicated to the mission, but you give an E4 a chance to make a quick buck, they're going to jump on it so that way they can pay for their cigarettes and energy drinks. So it's just, it cracks me up that the paratroopers in the 40s had their own version of the E4 Mafia. Well, why don't you join the paratroopers? I want to be the best. I want to be hardcore. No, I want to double my pay is what I want to do. The young soldiers are young soldiers. That's for sure.
I never heard about that. We're going to have to talk about that more in the future. Or Mafia. I'd be interested to hear that.
When I was going through, I know that officers got more jump pay back in the day than enlisted soldiers. When I was a paratrooper, everybody got a flat rate of $110 a month, which I thought was hysterical because with inflation, salaries were much better, but jump pay had only gone up to $110 in the 1990s. It wasn't all that much more from $50 in the 40s. It just wasn't. The incentive wasn't there. Guys weren't doing it for the $110 at that point. It was. Yeah. But at that point, there was also more cachet to it. That was like, wow, that's being a paratrooper was a thing, and was the record that guys like your dad and his buddies established. It was something to aspire to for sure.
So that's all it was $110.
Yeah, it was 110, but I think it's up to. I want to say it's up to 150 now. But I went through jump school in 1991, so that's been a minute ago now. But yeah, it was $110 back when I was on status.
That's 75 years ago. Hey, we need people. You need a better union, I guess.
All right, so now we're talking about jumping out of airplanes. So I think that sets this next clip up pretty well. You want to give us a little bit of a backstory before I play this one?
Oh, all right, yeah. So my dad. This one came from another tape. This came from an even earlier technology, cassette tape. I was just going through my dad's cassette tapes, and I was kind of listening to him and trying to find some information. And then this one came up from my dad, and he talks about training with the British and things like that. So this one, when this one first came up, I said, oh man, this is going to be gold. So go ahead and run it.
All right, so this is the audio tape, correct, sir?
Correct.
All right, give me a second here and I'll get this one stood up.
Hi, this is George Luz from Rhode Island, a member of the E Company. I'm making these recordings after receiving some harassment from Bill Garnier and a call about 2 days ago from Richard Winters telling me to get this tape in. About 3 months before the invasion, I was selected to train with the British down in Salisbury Plains area, the 6th Airborne Division. Made a few jumps with them. And I can tell you that one of them that I made out of a bomber.
So George, there the tape ends. So your dad's training with the British. He's going to jump out of a bomber, but you're just leaving us hanging. So what's the story?
So I'm listening to this tape, and I'm saying, like I said, this is going to be gold, because I never heard him talk about, let's say, that particular part of his service. And I'm saying, it's going to be fantastic. All of a sudden, the thing goes blank. It's like, however, he told me this story, so I know the ending. Like he said, he jumped out of a bomber, and you showed the picture of one of the bombers, and Whitney or something like that. And so he tells me, he says, okay, now this particular bomber, what they do is they jump out of the middle, the belly of the plane. There's a hole there, and they jump out of that. So my dad jumps out, and he gets oriented, and he looks out, and here comes the bomber, another bomber, right at him. So,
oh my goodness,
like evasive action and get out of the way. So I always remember him telling me that story. So I would have preferred to hear him tell it himself. But anyway, yeah, so he told me that story. So that's what happened. The bomber was just bearing right down on him. I wonder how often that happened. When you have these V's and everybody's jumping out, and, certain people are faster or slower or whatever it is. So,
well, I mean, I can't speak from how things were done especially the British Royal Air Force in 1944, but ordinarily, the aircraft, the pilots are certified to drop paratroops. They know how to keep station. They know how to keep offset from each other. They know how to maintain altitude, but there's always mishaps and miscommunications. That's for sure. But you would think that, a paratrooper exits an aircraft, they're descending, vertically down. The bombers are going horizontally. They would be, above where the paratroopers are dropping. So there's obviously some kind of miscommunication. I'm glad your dad was able to survive that mishap. Holy cats.
That was crazy.
So, but jumping out, so the Whitley bomber, that's absolutely amazing. And that I always thought jumping through the hole in the floor, that's something you see in like all the World War II spy movies, but I can't think of a more inefficient way to drop parachute infantry. That just makes the C-47 seem so much more effective in order to be able to get the troops out quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Quickly. Now, I haven't been able to do any real research on that. How did they determine who was going to train with the British and who wasn't? I know they didn't cross-train half of the troops, but, so why did my dad get chosen to train with the British? And, did they just say, okay, who's going to volunteer? Okay, you. You know how the military is. You don't really volunteer. They volunteer you.
That's what I was thinking. And I'm thinking, I've got no idea. I wasn't there. I've got two thoughts though. One, based off my experience as a company commander, that Luz was available. He was in my line of sight when I got the task. Hey, Luz isn't doing anything. Get him over here.
That's true. That's probably the way it happened.
The other thing that I'm thinking about, and this is pure conjecture, is that when we had Joey Eisenhower on the show, and he was talking about the Jedburghs, and if you remember, the OSS teams were always three person teams. There was an officer commanding the team. Then there was always a foreign officer, ordinarily French, who would be able to speak the language and be the liaison with the resistance when the Jedburghs hit the ground and occupied France. And then an enlisted radio man. And I know your dad was a radio man, and usually the bombers were the method of insertion for the Jedburgh teams, because they could be inserted as part of a larger bombing operation. It kind of provided a plausible cover for getting those teams inserted. Sure. I'm not saying your dad was considered to try out for the OSS, but it does. At the same time, it does make me kind of wonder, why was this radio guy suddenly dropping out of with the bombers? It opens up this question mark. I'm like, but I don't know. It's just But anyway. True or not, your dad didn't go to the OSS. He stayed with Easy Company, and he did jump into combat out of a C-47. And I think we've got something that talks about that a little bit too.
Well, yeah, this is a great one, because I've got my dad. I've got an audio clip of my dad, and I think we've done this one before. Of my dad talking about his experience jumping into Normandy, but here you go. This is great because. All your viewers are going to get a chance to see my dad tell the story in person on camera. And so this is his experience jumping into Normandy and landing, and just a brief little overview of what he saw.
What happened was in Normandy was as we were flying in, I happened to look out and I could see the beach. And when they stand up and hook up, I asked the guy, one of the crew chiefs, what time is it? And he said, it's 1:30. So we stood up and hooked up, and there's a box above the door. When the red light comes on, you hook up.
It's going, guys.
When the green light comes on, you go. What happened, anti-aircraft shells started exploding, and it shorted out the box.
Oh, wow.
It was going red, green, and we were waiting.
Yeah.
Finally, the navigator came out from the cockpit and said, what are you guys doing in here? We were about, let's say, 3 to 4 minutes late.
Wow. That put you a long way back.
Right. When we landed, I expected to see, at least 3 or 4 guys around me.
Yeah.
But I was all alone.
Wow.
I went out, it's about 1:30, and I didn't get back to my company until 7:45 in the morning.
Wow.
7:45.
All night.
All night. And the invasion, when they started shooting the Navy, I swear to hell, I saw those shells. They were so huge.
Yeah.
And I teamed up with another officer from headquarters company, and we going over the hedgerows, and we finally went up and met him. We moved on to a place called Carentan. We stayed there for a while. Then they moved us outside of Cherbourg. But we went up there, and we left Normandy somewhere around the latter part of July, August, or 1st of August. And little did we know, we were going back and get ready to jump into Holland.
That was my dad's experience jumping into Normandy. So
it's funny to hear your dad talking about, landing on their feet and being lighter. Because two things come to mind. When I watch, Band of Brothers, or when I watch the newsreel footage of paratroopers getting on aircraft, they're definitely weighed down. They're laden down. But those haversacks they carried are a third of the size of some of the rucksacks that I had to jump. And it looks like, you see Bucks walking around. He's got his chute on. He's already got his, his haversack, rigged up, but he's not, compared to a trooper in the 82nd when I was on status, he's barely laden with anything. Whereas like when we were getting ready to jump into Haiti, my rucksack weighed over 100 pounds.
Wow.
I was, to be honest, I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with it once I hit the ground. We were way overloaded, but that's a different discussion for a different day. But they seem as though they went in really light, like true combat equipped. We're not bringing anything extraneous. We're bringing ammo, water, and some small rations, and we're just going to make this happen. So it seems like they've got less equipment on them to begin with, which leads to less injury when you're making a jump. But number two, like all the troopers I served with, I mean, they were runners and they were fit, but those guys could, if everyone's bench pressing 250, 300 pounds and they look like your dad, I could bench press your dad. Those guys were tiny compared to paratroopers today.
Oh, sure, yeah.
When you weigh 110 pounds, it's a lot easier to make a standing landing. That's Walter
Gordon tells that. I listened to Walter Gordon's interview with Ambrose, and he tells that. He said all these other guys were like gymnasts, these little small guys, because Walter was like 6 foot. He was like 6 foot, and he wasn't a gymnast, that's for sure. And he talks about, landing, and Ambrose would ask him about your landing, how did it go? And he said, well, you didn't really land, gracefully. It was kind of like a splat. So anyway, so that was the particular case. But you're right, they were like gymnasts. I think my dad weighed, he didn't weigh in. He was like 5'6", 5'7" anyway, and they were all really small guys. So.
Which is, I always find that impressive too, because you see, you look at, you can't ever judge a book by its cover, like they say, but you look at a really good group of, paratroopers, there's always going to be some muscle heads, but the guys who really keep trucking tend to be the small, lean guys, because there's just something about that body type. There's always heart, mental toughness, etc. But you put yourself at a disadvantage if you're carrying around an extra, 30 pounds, even if it's muscle. You're like you're already that much more encumbered. Being able to find that balance between being strong and being able to have a lot of endurance, the anaerobic versus the aerobic. The Army is always trying to figure out the right combination of fitness to keep on trucking. That's for sure. But that guys seem to be smaller, 75 years ago anyway, though. That's for sure.
Oh, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. We've all grown a few more inches than our dad, because my dad is like 5'7" and I'm like 5'11 and a half. I never could make that 6 foot. That always bothered me.
Just round up. That's what we do in the Army.
I know. That's right. It's just, I'm 6 foot tall. 6 foot. 6 foot tall, 190.
There you go. Right.
I used to weigh 190. That was a long time.
Well, you're looking great, George. So what's now you mentioned you found the tape when you're kind of taking advantage of the COVID slowdown, if you will. So what's going on now? What now that things might start getting back to normal, folks are getting vaccinated. What's next for George Luz?
Well, yeah, the trips to Normandy and the trips to Europe with Stephen Ambrose haven't revved up yet. We're hoping that in the future things happen, but I've been able to put together a couple of trips within the U.S. I'm going to be speaking at some private events. And, hey, if anybody ever wants me to come and, share these stories with them, if they've got an event coming up in the future, just give me a buzz and, we can talk about details and things like that. And, it's always an honor for me to share these stories about my dad and the guys he served with.
Oh, that's fantastic. And anybody who wants to get in touch with George, they can leave a comment right here in the Commander's Voice, and we'll make sure you guys get hooked up. It is always great talking to you, George. It's always great having you on the show. It's always great hearing your dad's stories. Speaking of which, I think you got a final one to share with us. You want to set this one up?
Yeah, well, this last one here is him explaining a little bit about techniques and jumping and things like that. What his experience is in the techniques of airborne. You might hear a little gunfire in the background on this. This was kind of.
All right, give me a second here. I'm getting this one set up, if the folks will bear with me.
Last time I made a jump was in Holland, No, wait a minute.
But I mean, you haven't jumped since you got out?
No. We have to make a jump about once every 3 months.
Qualify.
To keep the jump status up.
Okay.
So just before I came home, I made a jump. Well, I went down to the jump fest the other day.
Yeah.
And I don't like their chutes. You know, they give you this.
Yeah.
The chutes that we had, you had going up and you pull on two, you go right, pull on the left, left.
Yeah.
And you were able to control your chute a lot better than that.
Yeah. They didn't look like they had much control.
No, I mean, we'd always come in on our feet.
Yeah.
I watched them guys down there, all you see was arms and legs. You know, below.
George, thank you.
All righty.
Right, they're George
Luz.
George, keep smiling. We'll catch you again.
All righty.
God bless.
Okay.
So in this one here, I found it interesting when he was talking about jumping in the legs, bada boom, and all that kind of stuff. He's taken me to that Leap Fest, which is an international competition where airborne troops from all over the world come to Rhode Island and take part in this competition. And so I went with him, and then when he passed away, I continue to go whenever I'm in town. It's typically in the beginning of August. And a dear friend of both of ours, David Aceta, I always try to contact Dave because he typically takes part in that competition. So I always try to make sure I'm there when he lands on at least one of his jumps.
That's awesome.
It's a great event, and that particular event that my dad was at was put on by the Rhode Island Army National Guard, and it was a employer appreciation weekend or something like that, which included Leap Fest, and it was interesting the way the interviewer Tom Kelly went to my dad's, name tag and said, George Luz. And because this was before Band of Brothers, the book had come out, but Tom probably didn't know who my dad was. He was another veteran, and like Tom was actually. And so the ironic thing was that was my dad's last interview. And he was killed in that industrial accident less than 2 months later. So.
I always think it's a shame that he was not around to see the series and see how things kind of shook out. But it's absolutely amazing to hear him talking about his stories, talking about, hey, I got a call from Garnier, I got a call from Major Winters, these household names now that at the time that would have been the first time, unless he was a real fan of Ambrose's book, the first time Mr. Kelly probably heard those names, and now they're almost a cultural phenomenon. So thank you very much for sharing this with us, George.
Hey, you're welcome. I've had these things for a little while, and I'm just because I haven't been on the road, I haven't been able to share them with anybody. And I wanted to share them with you, Ben, because, we've had a lot of fun on these. You do a great job. You're a great host, very knowledgeable. So I thought no better way to debut these than with you.
It's always a ball to have you on the show, George. I'm looking forward to having you back soon. So thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been George Luz and Ben Powers on the Commander's Voice, talking about, paratroopers back in the day. But please remember, we've got paratroopers, Marines, airmen, sailors, everyone deployed in harm's way today. Thank you very much, and y'all take care. Bye.